Ptoleconosis, and also the Temple of Ephesus were major structures. And the statue of Zeus was known for monumentality as well, the one at Olympia. So this is the most prominent thing. But there really is no evidence there were ever any plantings on the platforms. It's not that close to the river to bring water if there were plantings up there. And there really aren't wells for bringing water that way either. And certainly it's not associated with a palace. So, somewhat difficult. There's also no stone here as well. And some of the Greek inscriptions emphasize the use of stone. What does the Hanging Gardens, the ziggurat at Babylon look like today? I thought you might want to know. This is what it looks like today. It's a hole in the ground. The Arabic name is the equivalent for the frying pan. If you think of a turned over frying pan, you get the idea. And this is it as well today. Why is it like this? Blame the Greeks. I'm a Near Eastern person. I'm going to blame the Greeks for everything bad. No offense. The ancient Greeks. Modern Greeks are fine. Alexander the Great came through, conquered Babylon, grandiose ideas, restore the ziggurat there. Don't just restore it, knock it down and rebuild. Knocked it down, he died early. This is one story about how it happened. There are others, one will say. Okay, here we have the ziggurat there. Now we're going to move on to the palace. Now, certainly the connection with the palace is found in some of the Greek sources for the Hanging Gardens. Here we have an aerial view of what the southern palace looked like. The northern palace up here is very badly eroded. The city wall ran through here, so the northern palace was sort of an annex, an addendum, a bulwark to the north of the main palace here. And off in one corner, close to the Ishtar Gateway, is a very strange structure. Oh, okay, here we just saw a reconstruction of what the palace looks like today. It was rebuilt in the time of Saddam Hussein for purposes of tourism. And off in this corner here, you see a very peculiar set of rooms. Oh, okay, the throne room again. Now, they're unlike anything else in the palace. And there seem to be a series of vaulted rooms in of an unusual location, and there's a lot of stone found there. There's also a set of wells found there as well. A well that had 3 different shafts, which Koldewey, who excavated this, thought that the 3 shafts were for a sort of a system of buckets on a chain going up and down and around to bring water up to the top to water the Hanging Gardens. You notice the walls are extra thick. We know one of the sources at least mentions the walls of the Hanging Garden being thick. And obviously, if you're going to have something high up, you need thick walls for the strength to support what is above them. So this was Koldewey's idea of what it was. There are problems with this. First of all, it's really near the entryway, the main entryway. So you're rather exposed there to everything going by, and it's near the main entry to the palace. In fact, to get to it, you have to go through here. Now, you would think if this was a garden for the king's wife, you'd want it further in, more private. So perhaps somewhere back in this way. Another problem with it is this is where the ration texts that gave food to the Judean king were found. Why on earth would they be in the garden? We now, a view of many scholars now is that actually this is a storehouse. We can't explain why the walls were particularly thick, but who knows? This is a reconstruction based upon what Koldewey thought the Hanging Gardens here would have looked like. So a structure with vaults underneath and terraces up above that would have had plantings on them. What next suggestion? Well, more recently, an English scholar, Donald Wiseman, suggested up here, just outside the palace, closer to the inner areas of the palace, between the river and the palace itself, an area up against the river, and basically you just have a sort of park with a series of terraces up against the side of it. And so you would have terraces, it'd be close to the palace. Okay, it's not on any acropolis, but not all the Greek sources say this. And how many of these Greek writers actually were in Babylon, actually to see what these hanging gardens supposedly were look like? Very, very few of them indeed. So they are probably reporting on what other people have told them, and stories, well, get exaggerated as they get passed from one person to another. That's another suggestion. More recently, a scholar, Julian Reid, in the British Museum, formerly of the British Museum in London, suggests this area. It's called the Western Outwork or Western Bulwark. It's right between the palace and the river, which is over here. There's an area with fabulously thick walls close to the inner areas of the palace that are here. And certainly there were remnants of some structures in it, but there was an area where there are no structures at all. And he has suggested that this may be where the hanging gardens were, on terraces. So really protected by a very thick wall from the river. I should have mentioned there's no particularly thick wall here. If the river flooded, this area could get drowned, according to Wiseman's reconstruction. And we're not actually even sure that this area, which is outside of the walls, actually wasn't flooded by the river. This is Reid's reconstruction of what the hanging gardens may have looked like in this area. Again, a series of terraces protected by a great wall. Possible. It's not large, but actually the size of it fits approximately what the Greek sources would have said.